What's up, people? J-Dub here with PWFEmpire.com to present to you WTF, aka the weekly top 5. As we saw in last week's episode of Monday Night Raw, Randy Orton was attacked by Seth Rollins with a curb stomp that was apparently so severe that it rattled Randy Orton's brain to the point where one of those voices in his head convinced him that he was an actor. Not only did that serve as Randy Orton's exit from the Authority, it also served as his exit from TV for the time being because he is off filming the WWE Studios movie, The Condemned 2. I have to say, whoever's running this WWE Studios filming schedule, this dude has impeccable timing because he knows when that right moment is, that perfect moment to completely fuck up the whole vibe. This dude is the human equivalent of an alarm clock going off on the weekend. I can just imagine this is the type of guy that will take some Lucky Charms and pick out all of the friggin' marshmallows, and then when you go to get a bowl of cereal, you have nothing but a whole damn box of oat pieces. The only reason we put up with the oat pieces is because we want the marshmallows, but the marshmallows are off filming movies. Like, what the hell is going on here? This is the second time that this has happened just within the last few months because Dean Ambrose was involved in a pretty similar situation when he was doing some great things on TV, but he was pulled away from his feud with Seth Rollins to go film another WWE Studios movie. But with Randy Orton, it's even worse because for the entire year, this dude has been nothing but Triple H's lackey. He was a lame duck champion going into WrestleMania. He was so terrible at that time. If I had collected all of the Dragon Balls, I would have used my one wish to make sure his ass didn't retain. And as great as the Evolution reunion was and their feud with The Shield, which I loved, at no point during that run was the talent that he inherently possesses and his uniqueness fully utilized. He was basically a drone, and that's a shame because when you give him something to fight for and someone to fight against, and most importantly, don't give him a friggin' lobotomy to the point where he loses his personality and then neuter him to the point where he loses something else, then he can do some great things, and we were just on the precipice of seeing that take effect. And whoever created that RKO out of nowhere meme, somebody needs to cut you a friggin' check because it seems as if the creative team had a renewed interest in Randy Orton and they pushed the reset button on his character because of how popular that became, and it also gave them a platform to build something on. So you finally have Randy Orton performing with some fire, some intensity, rapidly rising back to the place where he can legitimately be called the apex predator. And what happens? You pull his ass away from TV. Now this was definitely a risky move to take, but one that I actually like. It seems like the only time big stars are written out of storylines is when they're legitimately injured or when they win the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, and I'm speaking completely hypothetically here, and just stop showing up, or maybe he's filming a WWE movie too. Who knows? But anyway, I digress. Allowing wrestlers to sell injury angles for more than 24 hours opens up a completely different avenue of storytelling that you otherwise would have been handicapped from exploring. It makes Seth Rollins look like a friggin' beast while building up the curb stomp as the most dangerous finisher in WWE. And it also sets Randy Orton up for a huge comeback. The people who made the call to turn on Randy Orton, it just so happens that their jobs are on the line at Survivor Series. And last time I checked, there was an open spot on Team Cena. Oh, and not to mention the biggest clue of them all, Survivor Series is in his hometown. So it seems as if everything is falling perfectly into place for a big return at that show. And WWE Studios, Mr. Human Alarm Clock over there, fucking up my chakra. You can go ahead and do what you need to do. All I know is that Randy Orton needs to be at Survivor Series. And if he's not, there will be hell to pay. And if you don't believe me, I will go to the papers if I have to. Speaking of Survivor Series, the Authority's authority will be on the line at that show. Of course, I knew about the stipulation for the match, but it didn't even hit me until yesterday when I was thinking about it like, oh shit, they actually could lose. I'm not going to make my prediction on what I think is going to happen quite yet. I'm saving that for next week's episode of PWTR. But I do want to toy around with the scenario because the mere fact that the stipulation was made means that the possibility that the Authority will lose power does exist. So with that being said, the question of the week that I pose to you all is, do you want to see the Authority lose at Survivor Series? They've been a pretty integral part of WWE's on-screen product for over a year now, involved with nearly all of the big-time storylines in some form or fashion, much to the chagrin of a lot of fans, and that's putting it mildly because For whatever reason, the Authority really pisses people off. And I have to say, I'm not one of those people, because just so happens my favorite wrestler of all time is Triple H, and my favorite female character of all time is Stephanie McMahon. So shit, I'm in heaven right now. Like, I'm good. It goes without saying that I love what's going on. But I do understand why some people don't. They can be a little too mean at times and too heelish, if ever a thing existed. But, you know, whatever. I guess they do take it a little too far sometimes and hurt people's feelings. But seriously, sometimes they are overbearing and forceful. And one thing that pops in my mind when I think of the subject of authority figures, the greatest of all time, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. When he was the main authority figure, he had a nice balance. He'd wreak havoc for damn sure. Like, he would go out there and he would cause some trouble. But if the situation called for it, he would have absolutely no problem getting beat up or making himself look like a fool for the benefit of the product. There was a time when the Authority was untouchable and showed absolutely no vulnerability whatsoever. Then on top of that, you did have those moments where they would take pot shots at individual members of the roster. And I mean, that's cool if it'll actually lead somewhere, but most of the time, it didn't. But I think they've made some great advancements beyond that. And when you look at what they've done for people like Daniel Bryan, The Shield as a unit, and then when you split them up individually and look at the platforms that they provided for Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and especially Seth Rollins, and you look at all of those stories, all of those moments, the Yes Movement, Occupy Raw, Daniel Bryan winning the WWE World Heavyweight Championship in the main event of WrestleMania, the reunion of Evolution, their feud with The Shield, Seth Rollins being Mr. Money in the Bank, absolutely none of that would have been possible without the Authority. So as far as I'm concerned, the positives far outweigh any perceived negatives on their side. But back to the question, does the Authority have more to do on WWE TV, or have they outlived their usefulness? Leave a comment down below and let me know. WWE Hall of Famer Edge recently took part in an interview with the website Alternative Nation, where he had this to say about the Attitude Era. People were always talking about the Attitude Era and all of this and all of that. But if you watch back, sometimes the matches weren't that great because we had 2 minutes. It's not possible to have a good wrestling match in 2 minutes. You can't tell a story. You can tell a haiku. Since the PG era, I know when I was in matches, I had half an hour sometimes, 20 minutes. There, I can tell a story. To me, that's the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. It all boils down to the wrestling at the end of the day. The Attitude Era was a lot about the hijinks backstage, and the matches kind of got forgotten about. It's looked at with rose-colored glasses because the ratings were good, and it was working for obvious reasons. But to me, those obvious reasons were characters like Stone Cold, who would then get in and have a long match at a pay-per-view. Characters like The Rock, who would be entertaining, but still, at the end of the day, they could go. I think now, you need a little bit of both. Something I've always found interesting, the Attitude Era at the very least is arguably and at the most widely regarded as the greatest and most entertaining era among real wrestling fans, aka the IWC or whatever you want to call them. But the specific purpose of the Attitude Era was to de-emphasize wrestling. They made a concerted effort to attract casuals who normally would never watch a wrestling show to watch them, because this wasn't just wrestling, this was something different, this was something new, fresh, innovative, revolutionary. They had the Crash TV, the Jerry Springer-like segments, the shock value, and the vulgarity of the product. That's the reason why the ratings were so high, because they intentionally created a product that non-wrestling fans would feel comfortable watching. Without a shadow of a doubt, the Attitude Era is by far the greatest departure from traditional professional wrestling in WWE history. Yet, it still is the most beloved by real wrestling fans. And what's funny is, some of the same folks complaining about sports entertainment today couldn't get enough of it back then. Far too often I see situations where people sound like grumpy-ass old men yelling at John Cena fans to get off my lawn and reminiscing about yesteryear. Today's product is nowhere near perfect, and I'm not even attempting to say that, so don't get it twisted. But what I am saying is, sometimes it doesn't get the credit that it deserves, and one of the reasons for that is because it lives in the shadow of the Attitude Era. It's as if people believe that the Attitude Era created a standard for what professional wrestling has to be. And if you aren't doing things exactly like they did back then you're not entertaining. And furthermore, you don't even deserve to call what you're doing professional wrestling. And that shouldn't be the case at all. The Attitude Era holds a very special place in the annals of wrestling history and in my personal history as a wrestling fan, because I started watching WWE in the Attitude Era and I love it for what it was. Wouldn't trade it for the world. However, I am glad that we have people like Chris Jericho and Dean Ambrose and Edge here who aren't trashing the Attitude Era, but are looking at it from a different perspective and taking off the nostalgia goggles and being more critical in an effort to start a more open conversation, because previously it's been subjected to nothing but hero worship. Now, I'm not saying it's a crime to relive great memories of the past, because heck, I do it all the time with my PWTR co-hosts and the WWE Network for just $9.99. I actually can't say free this month because I bought the network and subscribed to it back in February when they asked me to the first damn time. So they want to go ahead and take my money and offer it for free to all of the people who sat on their damn hands for 9 months. But you know what? I'm not even going to go there. I digress. Moving on. What I'm trying to say is that it's nothing wrong with reliving great memories of the past. But when the past prevents you from looking at the present with an open mind, then we have a problem. In this week's rumor report, we have some news on Roman Reigns. As we all know, he's been recovering from emergency surgery to repair a hernia, but he could be on his way back to WWE TV in the very near future. Original estimates for his recovery time were all over the friggin' place. I originally heard that the best case scenario was 4 to 6 weeks, then I heard 6 to 8 weeks, but either way, we're past that time frame right now because we're entering into the 8th week that Roman Reigns has been out. With WWE's doctor also saying that it possibly could take up to 10 to 12 weeks for him to be fully ready to come back, you have to imagine that right now the creative team is thinking about ways to introduce him back into the fold. There are live event listings in December that have Roman Reigns scheduled to compete against, of all people, Rusev, who also happens to be the current United States champion, which presents a very interesting situation. Now, we all know the classic wrestling line card subject to change, but the fact that this idea even popped into the mind of someone in WWE, that does make it worth talking about, because this could possibly clue us into a potential feud between these two somewhere down the line. Here we have two powerhouses, two rising stars in WWE, and I can imagine that they would want a feud between these two guys to be a pretty big deal. I remember that battle royal on Raw that Roman Reigns won to get a shot at the WWE Championship in the ladder match at Money in the Bank, and the last two participants in that battle royal were Roman Reigns and Rusev, and I remember how the crowd went friggin' nuts when it came down to just those two, and they had their showdown, and they were circling each other in the ring, and I was going nuts too. I was really excited, and then I remembered their two singles matches that they had on SmackDown. And my reaction to both of those matches was, I mean, it's alright, it's definitely not bad. I wouldn't go as far as to say it was great either, but I do have to acknowledge the fact that both of those matches did end in disqualifications due to interference, because there was other stuff going on at that time. And I'm pretty sure that if we were to get a more focused program where it's just about those two guys, then I feel we could possibly get more of an accurate sense of what they're capable of. And as far as the United States Championship is concerned, after Rusev won the title, I did say on PWTR that whoever eventually beats him can't be some around the way jabroni that would usually compete for the title, like Sheamus. Now, I don't mean to call Sheamus a jabroni, but look, dude, I don't give a damn how many rematches they give you. Your ass is not touching that title as long as Rusev has it. And if Sheamus can't do it, it damn sure won't be anybody like Jack Swagger or Dolph Ziggler or Kofi Kingston, because all indications point to the person who takes the United States Championship from Rusev will also be the first person to legitimately defeat Rusev. And you may need to bring somebody from higher up on the card to do that. And the question is Roman Reigns that person? First, WWE would have to build up the importance of that championship, which they have made some inroads to do, but this is like a significant build, because if this is their strategy, bring somebody from higher up on the card to defeat Rusev, they have to try their damnedest to not make winning the United States Championship come off like a demotion, and that's no easy feat. And honestly, I don't even know if that's possible, but nevertheless, I will be watching to see if anything becomes of this Reigns versus Rusev listing, and I'll also be watching upon Roman Reigns' imminent return to WWE. Anytime a wrestler gets injured, it's never good news. However, I'm hoping that all of the parties involved take this unfortunate situation and use it as an opportunity to do some reevaluation on what went right and what went wrong. One note that I would have for the creative team: Roman Reigns is not John Cena. Do not even attempt to try to make Roman Reigns into John Cena. If John Cena is going that direction, you take Roman Reigns' ass from over there and put him in that direction. He doesn't need to be in that area over there. He doesn't have to have anything in common with John Cena. Don't try to force him down somewhere that he naturally should not be. And speaking of forcing him into unnatural positions, remember, he is a rising star. He is not an established one, and he has to be booked as such. Don't let your ambitions for Roman Reigns get the best of you, because being consumed with the idea that he'll be the next big thing is exactly what will prevent him from being the next big thing. And to close out this edition of WTF, first and foremost, rest in peace to the late great Eddie Guerrero. Yesterday was the 9th anniversary of his death, and I kid you guys not, every single time that I've heard his theme music, Viva la Raza, in those 9 years, and honestly, even before that, while he was still alive, a big smile would always creep across my face, because it pretty much encapsulated everything that he was. And when you look at what he provided, from his wrestling ability to his charisma, the mic skills, the entertainment, the gimmick, everything was working in tandem. And when you looked at the complete picture, like, I know that for whatever reason, people have turned the term sports entertainer into a negative thing, but when you look at it in its purest form, athletics and entertainment, that is what Eddie Guerrero epitomized. And his death was so untimely, and it's very sad that we can't have any new memories with Eddie Guerrero, but we do have that ability to go back and relive those memories. And we do have a columnist on PWF Empire, Justin. He wrote up a column in memoriam of Eddie Guerrero, and he shared some very personal stories about Eddie and how he affected him, and why Eddie Guerrero is his favorite wrestler of all time. So I would love it if you guys check that out. And yeah, rest in peace to Eddie Guerrero. And while you're over on PWF Empire, feel free to check out the latest episode of Pro Wrestling Talk Radio, and also set the date for the next episode of PWTR, which will take place after Monday Night Raw on Monday, of course. We'll be previewing Survivor Series, giving our thoughts on all of the matches on the card and the build-up for the show, and giving our predictions on what we think will happen, what we want to happen, all of that good stuff. In the meantime, thank you guys for tuning in to WTF, and I'll catch you next week. Peace out.